I think porn is one of the greatest disservices to our society that has happened in a long, long time. The high availability of highly stimulating sexual content online, I think it's just sucking the life out of our society. I think we have an incredibly sexually unhealthy society. I think we have an incredibly sexually repressed society, and it's such a pain point because sex is this incredible thing. And when it's done with consent with another person, it's not harming anybody. Well, why would you not want to do that? You know, there's so much joy and pleasure and connection available there. And at the same time, we have it so much in the shadow. And I think porn is a symptom of that, but it's also a cause of that. It's this vicious cycle.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Soul Kink Therapy. My name is Emily Letts. I am a therapeutic dominatrix based in Boulder, Colorado, and today I have the honor of inviting Taylor Johnson on the podcast. Taylor is, Taylor, what are you?
It's a great question.
It's a great question.
I'm a human who is very interested in sex and helping to create a sex positive, sex healthy world. Yeah. Some people call me a sex coach. Some people call me a sexologist. Some people call me a sex educator. I could fall under the umbrella of all of those things. I'm also just a guy.
Guru?
Yeah,
Sex
I prefer
guru?
master.
Yeah,
Like
master
sex
of...
master.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I met Taylor only a couple weeks ago. We met at Omrapani's Tantra Meets BDSM out in the Dominican Republic. And unbeknownst to me, Taylor had just moved to Boulder and into my delicious community of conscious kink. And so I was super excited to meet him. And then I realized that Taylor has quite the platform and message around semen retention, porn addiction. What are some of the other fancy words you used?
Learning what sexual transmutation is. I know that sounds fancy, but how to do that in your life. Basically, it means how to make intentional choices with your sex life that lift up your entire life. You know, and don't get pulled down by shame and all the things that can like suck us away from the things that are important to us.
Amen. Hear, hear. And so I thought it might be such a treat for all of our listeners to have Taylor come and share a little bit about his expertise. One of the reasons, Taylor, also is because a lot of this audience is crossdressers. And I know this might not be an audience you're super familiar with, but I think there's a lot of crossover, obviously. Because the thing with crossdressers is that they are, because their sexuality is so stigmatized and so hidden from public view, because they are, their arousal lives in the place that no man should ever want to go, which is their feminine. They oftentimes their only outlet for sexual connection or stimulation or intimacy is through screens and online. Which, I feel like you have a lot to say about. So I was just wondering if you just want to kind of dive in of like, I'm curious about if you could give us a little background on what got you to wanting to explore like this world as well as what this world means to you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Let's first describe what this world means when you use those words. I want to be really clear and say that I don't want to even pretend to begin to know what it's like to be in the cross-dressing world. But what I am excited about is having a collaborative conversation to be of service and to try to bring some of what I do to you. You know,
That's exactly what would be great.
If I can be helpful in some way, that's awesome. And I don't want to come across as all the things that I know will directly apply to you because many of them won't apply, but some of the same ideas and some of the same underlying concepts will probably be helpful and supportive along the way. So just wanted to say that up front. And I got to where I am right now in my sex life and in my life as a coach, educator, sexologist, guide, mentor, whatever you want to call it, because I used to really struggle with sex when I was in my early 20s, and I had all the, you could call it dysfunctions, premature ejaculation, erectile dysfunction, porn addiction. I had a lot of sexual anxiety, lots of shame. I was just a whole sexual mess. So I went on a big journey to try to figure this stuff out. And through the process, my sex life did improve, and also many other aspects of my life did. In fact, all of them, really. My
Wow.
friendships, my business, the amount of money that I made, my overall just experience of life. And I realized, oh, there's a reason
Huh.
people have written books about this. There's a reason the esoteric traditions that talk about integrative healthy sexuality exist. It's not just this sort of fantastical, like disconnected mystical concept. Like it actually works and it's real and it's practical. I want to talk about it. Yeah.
Hmm. So what do you think? So, the other day I had a session with a client and
Yeah.
they are, they're in a homosexual relationship, so they're married to a man, and they were talking about how they feel such immense guilt. They masturbate multiple times a day, and they feel such immense guilt every time they do that because this feeling that they are leaking energy that's not going to their partner. Is there truth in that?
There could be. I'm also not somebody who's going to come in and dogmatically say you should or shouldn't do anything. I'm going to be the guy that comes in and says, "How's that working for you? Like, what's the quality of your relationship? If you're masturbating 3 times a day and you feel very satisfied with your relationship and your sexual connection is on fire and you're satisfied in your life in general, like, who am I to suggest anything else? You know?" So I would start with
Oof.
some questions. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love your humility, and I feel like you have a lot of wisdom to share.
Yeah, I mean, but that feels like an important thing to say,
Yeah.
up front, because everything operates on a bell curve in my perspective, right? I
Yeah.
generally operate under the belief that I, well, it's true that I have a penis, but I believe that all the people in the world who have a penis, there's a bell curve to things. So on one end, there are people who can ejaculate multiple times a day and feel happy and healthy and alive. They're far over on one side of this bell curve. And then in the middle, you have most guys, most people who need to ejaculate with some amount of intentional frequency to live in some sort of optimal
Harmony.
harmony,
Yeah.
health, both physical, mental, relational, etc. And then you have some people that are all the way over here on the other side of the bell curve that need far fewer ejaculations on a regular basis to be their most healthy selves. And that's a perspective that comes in many ways from the Taoist sexuality tradition that does see ejaculation as a healthy part of sex, but they also say you should be intentional with them because they have an impact. They have an impact on your life, they have an impact on your relationships. And if you bring intentionality to them, they can be far more pleasurable. You can learn how to have full body ejaculatory orgasms, and they can be way more pleasurable and meaningful to share with a partner compared to if you just do it by default all the time, sort of mindlessly as the programmed end result of a sexual experience. I'll just make this about myself for a moment. Well, currently I'm not in relationship. When I was in relationship, if I were to masturbate and ejaculate 3 times in a day, there's, at least for my constitution, my body type, my age, there's no way I would want to have sex with my partner later in the day. I would be spent, right? I would be spent. Even twice a day, I would probably I could still want to have sex if I masturbated and ejaculated earlier in the day once, but the drive, the desire, that sort of like gusto that pushes sexual seeking behavior would be less in me. So it would be less likely that that kind of sexual connection would happen. And if
Mm.
it's true that I really value sexual connection in a relationship, then you would think that I would want to put energy and effort into that. So if I'm doing things that in some way reduce the overall amount of energy that I have to add to a sexual encounter in my relationship, you could say that I'm leaking that energy. You could say that
Mm.
I'm putting it or allocating it elsewhere, whatever,
Mm.
however you want to call it. Does that
Mm.
make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it really does. When you start, like, was it hard to start being more intentional when you
It's a
started
good
doing it in your
question.
life?
I would say that I think bringing ejaculatory choice into your life will confront you with some of the most, how do I want
Mm.
to say this? Physiologically challenging moments that you will experience, at least in the realms of pleasure, because the body really wants to ejaculate. There's a lot of force there. There's a lot of learned patterns. There's a lot of evolutionary programming that says pleasure, sex, ejaculate. It
Yeah.
sort of drives you towards that.
Yeah.
And I would say when I first started, it actually wasn't that difficult because I was at a sexual rock bottom place. And so I was just sort of trying to take in everything that I could find that might give me some sort of hope. And I was
Mm.
just like, fuck it, I'll try anything. I'll try whatever. And so there was this sort of almost like a desperation or a deep hunger for answers in my life at that point. So I did
Yeah.
start to play with that and explore that and experience results. And then when I started having more sex from that place, that's when it would be sometimes this like, "Ooh," like,
Uh,
"Oh, I wanna do it, but it's
that sounds
don't no, not
painful.
gonna do
That
that thing."
noise sounds painful.
Yeah, and there were plenty of moments, and there have been tons of moments where it it did take a sort of muscular contraction to stop that reflex, or to stop myself from going in that direction. But what I would say is when I look back at most of my most, incredible sexual experiences
Yeah.
that were mind-blowing, and you could call them transpersonal or spiritual or cosmic, or when they got into the full body non-orgasmic, wow, full body non-ejaculatory orgasmic states of pleasure, almost all of those happened after a decision point in sex where I was faced with the decision, do I ejaculate or not? And when in those moments I've made the choice to not ejaculate, every time you say no to something is saying yes to something else, right? So I'm saying yes
Mm.
to prolonged pleasure, yes to deeper connection,
Mm.
yes to all the exploration that can happen if I choose not to ejaculate. Because if I ejaculate, technically, yes, the sexual experience doesn't have to be over, but all the neurochemicals and hormones that flood my body and brain say that it's over. So I have a different response. My zest is less, my drive is less. So I say yes to a longer focus on pleasure and connection. And when that choice is made, so many other doors can open up in the sexual experience.
Hmm. Is there ever a fear? And I'm not gonna just start talking about my orgasms, um,
Yeah.
even though, like, I don't think most of my audience have vulvas, but, there is this feeling of, like, I will lose it, like a scarcity feeling. Like, it's if I don't capitalize on it now, it's not gonna come again. Is that something that is common with penis bearers?
Are you saying your experience is that, like, if you feel the orgasm or like right around the corner, you want to go to it because if you don't go there, you will not maybe get it later?
Yeah, well, lose it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that an
Yeah.
experience? Is that a like, scarcity? 'Cause, like, scarcity and urgency are, like, 2 really fun, delightful creatures that I think dance around orgasms and sexual pleasure quite a lot.
Yeah. I mean, that brings in a different question for me that's really around the philosophy of like, what is sex for? Like
Mm.
what's the goal of
Mm.
sex? And I like having sexual experiences where orgasm isn't the goal. And if orgasm happens, great. And
Mhm.
ironically, I've found that the more sexual experiences I have like that, the more often orgasms do happen. But if I'm seeking orgasm or if I'm with somebody who's seeking orgasm, it there's this level of, unless we're consciously doing that for fun and we're both on board, right? There
Mm.
can be this level of disconnection that sometimes comes from that. Or I'm like, well, why are you doing that thing? Like I'm feeling you moving away, or what's going on here? And then
Mhm.
there's the orgasm. Cool. Then what? So that's sort of my perspective on it. Like, sure, if you say no or let go of an orgasmic experience at one point, it might not come. In fact, it probably won't come back around in the same way. So what?
Mm.
You know,
Mhm.
but that's also like a huge jump for most people who have a penis, because I remember my younger self, I used to think when I heard the first few times, oh, you could consider having sex and not ejaculating. Yes, it's true. I was in this sort of rock bottom place and I was like, I'm going to try to find anything that works. But there was this other part of me that was like, fuck you, no way.
Like,
Like,
"Don't
no
take
way.
my treat away."
Yeah. Because I mean, I remember when I was younger in my early 20s, like I had a sexual experience with a woman where, like, how do I say this?
Mhm.
I don't know how to put this into words other than to just say, like, I did have an orgasm, but it was like, I don't know, I felt like I could have done it myself or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
it was this sort of thing like, I don't know what you really did there for me," kinda thing. And,
Like, well,
like,
you
I said
basically could have been replaced by my hand.
totally. Yeah, and I said something of that effect to her, and it was a really shitty thing to say in the moment,
Yeah.
and, like, hindsight, what a bad move that was for me, but my
Yeah.
young self, like, I didn't know, and
Mhm.
really, like, had I focused more on the connection between us, like,
Mm.
that could have been turned into a highly erotic moment, you know?
Mhm.
But it wasn't.
Le I have some questions. First of all, can you tell me a little bit more what does a rock bottom state mean?
Yeah, I mean, it means so many different things for different people, right? And it means
What
different
for
things in different
you?
contexts. Yeah, for me, at that point, it meant I felt completely sexually lost. I felt ashamed of my sexual abilities. I even went through periods of time where I avoided women completely because, excuse me, I was afraid of being the guy that would have some kind of dysfunction with them, and then the sexual experience would end and there wouldn't be satisfaction, and I would just continue this really painful pattern. And so I kept myself in isolation and jealousy and shame and anxiety, and it was just this pit of like, I don't think it can get worse than this sexually, and it was more than obviously sex is more than just sex too. It was this connection piece, like where am I getting intimate connection from? It's not happening. Where am I getting my touch from? It's not happening. It was this like kind of just shriveled up, like kind of
Hmm.
yeah,
And
space.
it was also a lot of it hearing is also around like in erectile dysfunction. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I would say, well, it was interesting. Like in my younger 20s, I oscillated between either ejaculating wickedly fast in sex, like under a minute, 30 seconds,
Got
or
it.
not being able to get an erection. Like either one of those things would happen. It was kind of like flip flop sometimes. I didn't really understand. And the erectile dysfunction was because I was watching so much porn at the time that
Oh shit.
I had become entirely desensitized to the beauty of a real human in front of me. So there's no way any variation of poses or clothes anyone could wear that would compare to a highly edited movie on a screen,
Mm.
right?
Can you just take like a minute and just go ahead and if I let me I've seen this on other podcasts. Can I give you a minute and can you rant about porn? And do you have that capacity in you?
I do. And considering you, the human listening, if cross-dressing really, if that's what you do, if that's where you find your arousal and turn on, like I do want to preface my rant up front by saying that I do know for some people outside of the mainstream heteronormative context, porn can be a way that feels really useful and safe to explore the desires that are hard to figure out in life. So I
Mm.
get that and I understand that. And I know that for a lot of my friends who are gay or bi have shared those things with me as well. So I just want to say that up front that that's in my awareness as I do this rant. So
Thank you. I really
get
honestly, I feel my beautiful crossdressers, I feel warmth in my heart for them. Okay,
yeah.
and are you ready? Okay, 5, 4, 3, I don't know, just go. Um,
Yeah, I think by and large, I think porn is one of the greatest disservices to our society that has happened in a long, long time. The high availability of highly stimulating sexual content online, I think it's just sucking the life out of our society in so many ways. And it's just creating this I think we have an incredibly sexually unhealthy society. I think we have an
mm,
incredibly sexually repressed society. I think uh, and it's such a
mm,
pain points because sex is this incredible thing. And when it's done with consent with another person, it's not harming anybody. Why would you not want to do that? There's so much joy and pleasure and connection available there. And at the same time, we have it so much in the shadow. And I think porn is a symptom of that, but it's also a cause of that. It's this vicious cycle. And so like, I remember hearing Om talk about this actually. So the teacher at the
Omrapani.
retreat, yeah, the teacher at the retreat we were just at, he talks about this in his book where he says, uh, porn isn't selling sex. And I thought, that is a really interesting concept. What do you mean by that? And then he goes on to say, porn is selling sexiness, and sexiness is not sex. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to paraphrase this all the right way, but this is a new way I'm thinking about porn, and it's really
Same.
fascinating to me,
Yeah.
right? So it's like porn is selling the visual stimulation of sexiness that you cannot attain. It's outside of yourself. There's no way you are going to be able to connect with the person on your screen. Not possible. Like maybe you could in another moment in time, but in the moment where your physiology is responding to the pixels and the sounds coming from the computer, it's not possible. So you're not in sex. If sex is this field you can enter into, or if sex is this state of mind or state of being that you can enter into, sex is touch. Sex involves touch. Sex involves connection, either with yourself or another person. And so many people out there watch, and my younger self included, watch so much porn that it totally rewires us, rewires our attraction circuits, our relational circuits, our expectation circuits, and our circuits of understanding how arousal even happens in a person to make it really challenging to get aroused and intrigued by a real human in front of us, regardless of body or gender or appearance or anything like that. Like we lose the specialness and the sacredness of the person who's in front of us. And that just gets like chipped away at us over and over and over again by porn. And we don't realize it's happening in the moment. And it feels good. Like porn, of course, porn feels good to look at. It's like cocaine for your dick, you know? It's like cocaine for your sexual response system. But what happens if you're somebody that does a lot of cocaine? Not good things, you know?
Mhm.
It's not good. And so, yeah, it's
Mm.
I think that's maybe phase 1, right? And I get it. I have watched a lot of porn, and it feels very rewarding to watch it. And if you give yourself the opportunity and the space to not be with porn for a while, and then you lean into the edge, easier for me to say with my lifestyle, but lean into the edge of finding the people you want to have the sexual experiences with and having those with those people, infinitely better than any porn video could ever be, you
Mhm.
know? Obviously, again, saying this from the place of heteronormative privilege, of course. And even still, I think that statement would stand true for most humans.
And rant. Wow, that was lovely. Well done. That was delightful. It is also I have worked with, I mean, I think probably you too. I've worked with so many people who have porn addiction, and also
Yeah.
femdom addiction, and
Mhm.
findom addiction, which is where the porn
Yeah.
that interacts with monetary exchange
Yeah.
as an experience of submission. But that's the thing also that porn doesn't allow, and which I think the people that I work with have a really hard time moving into, which is vulnerability.
Mm.
What does it mean to bring vulnerability into your body, into your sexual pleasure, into your connections, into intimacy?
Yeah.
I feel like vulnerability is the key, and when you can locate what it means to be vulnerable and be able to hold that in your palm, in open palms, and offer it to another being, I
Yeah.
feel like that I used to. It's funny. I used to do everything in my humanly power to not be vulnerable,
Mm.
to the point where nothing made me feel vulnerable, and I was like, "I don't think I feel vulnerable about anything," and then I remember someone somewhere looked at me and be like, "That's not good." And I thought I thought I had, like, figured out life, and they were like, "No, bitch, like, that's bad. That's
Yeah.
real, real bad." And then so I started training myself to lean like, what is the scary thing? How do I just
Yeah.
sit in the scary thing? And that's completely changed my life, and that's one of the things that I find with people who are addicted to porn, that ability to be vulnerable, that inability to be vulnerable shows up in every aspect of
Yeah.
their life.
Yeah, well, porn is a very low cost method to move in the direction of your sexual desires, right? It's
Right.
very easy. It doesn't take any effort other than typing the words into the computer. You don't have to
Right.
go find somebody else. You don't have to like express your desires, which can be very vulnerable. You don't have to
Yeah.
negotiate desires. You don't have to have all these steps that are usually involved in a healthy human sexual interaction. You could just for humans fucking. That's what I want to see. Check, you know?
Hey. Yeah.
Eh, and
Yeah.
I mean, vulnerability of is such a rich topic, and there's multiple different ways to approach it, but there's one, vulnerability with self, right? How can you be vulnerable with yourself, and how does how does one own one's own real true desires? Like, have you ever taken some time to just journal and reflect? Even if you know that you're gonna burn the pages afterwards so nobody will ever see them, if you take a little bit of time and write down, like, what are my actual sexual desires? What do I really want? And, like, what are some of the far out things that I would wanna do? And can I at least, if I don't tell them to anybody else, can I at least own them with myself versus sort of keeping them at an arm's distance, even from my own self? So there's that part. Then there's the vulnerability piece with other people. And this one becomes a little more nuanced because you do want to be intentional with the people that you're vulnerable with, right? Like, you don't want to go be vulnerable in certain ways with the random stranger on the subway and start sharing with them how you have fantasies about fucking somebody dressed up as an animal while they scream and somebody else pees on you,
Well,
you know?
we were able to whip that
Like,
fantasy out real quick.
yeah, whatever. This is only
No
my
big
biggest
deal.
fantasy of all
No
time.
big deal. Move on.
Yeah, it's right. So, like, and for, if you're listening to this and cross-dressing is the place where you find your sexual arousal and turn on, obviously you're not gonna wanna go just talk to anybody about this, right? Like, you're gonna wanna find community that you can interact with, and community is so crucially important. And this is why people in the LGBTQ community call it a community, right? And, like, connect with folks who can resonate with and relate to the experiences that they're having outside of the main public discourse, because the main public discourse does not include that. So there would be, like, strong encouragement from me for anybody listening to this to find other people you can just have real conversations with that you feel safe, because safety is key for real vulnerability, right? Safety is crucially important. So that's, like, find those people. And if it feels hard to find those people, try harder. Like, cause what else
Keep
is like,
fucking
what
going.
else you gonna do with your life?
Mm.
Like, for real. Like,
Hmm.
it comes to that question point for me. Like, is it worth hiding? Probably in some ways, it's very logistically, practically worth hiding certain aspects of life from the corporate job, of course. But is it worth hiding your soul from other humans that you could deeply relate to in other parts of your life? I don't think so.
Mm. A lot of people make that trade-off though. Like a
Yeah.
lot, especially in long-term relationships. A lot
Yeah.
of people.
Yeah, and see, this is an area that I'm not as familiar with, so I don't know that world as much, but there's this part of me that just, like, aches and, like, feels pain when I hear that, like, "Oh, that hurts." Like, ouch, to feel like you have to hide some part of your identity from your partner, from the world, and that's hard. Yeah, and all the more reason to find somebody you can talk to about it who gets you. And ideally, somebody who's also in a similar space in their life so you can relate and be in a sort of shared peer type experience.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I'm actually like in the middle of launching a cross-dressing community just to serve. Uh, like the amount of pain and like grief within such a beautiful community of men is mind-blowing. Like is
Yeah.
mind-blowing and it's like but it's also crazy because it's just like your neighbor is a cross-dresser. Like you know what I mean? Like the guy three down like one, it feels like 20% of all men have these fantasies, want this experience. Like it is so common. And yet they just like walk like passing on the street, walk each other by, and both of them think they're completely alone, and that they're the
Mhm.
only person to have ever wanted this or ever explored this. And it's like, no, they're everywhere.
Hmm.
So I want to switch topics because you said something previously that I thought was really interesting, which is like,
Switch it up.
what is sex for?
Yeah.
And I'm really curious, you and you're pretty new to my understanding was at Omrapati's retreat, Tantra meets BDSM, you're pretty new to the BDSM conscious exploration.
Yes, and I would say it was not my first exposure to BDSM, but it was my first training where I'm learning what actually happens, what's
Yeah.
actually possible. How do you actually do it versus a little short workshop at a festival or a little like afternoon workshop in a liberal city, like which
Yeah.
those things I have done those things and I've played with elements of BDSM, but this is my first time going into a full on training around it. Yeah.
Yeah, and the depth and the richness which Omrapani brings is next level, and I really he's yeah, I really love his teachings, and they really parallel what I've discovered in my own practice. So my curiosity is exploring conscious kink in this way, has it changed or altered or expanded your feeling of what is sex for?
I actually don't think so. But I think what it has done is it has opened my mind to what sex, like the even greater potential of what can happen with sex, right? Like before these trainings, I believed that sex was for all kinds of things: play, pleasure, connection, growth, depth, discovery, learning, community, meaning, you know, like you could list 20 other things there. It's like about so many different things. For some people, it's about procreation too. It could be so many different things. So all of those things still exist for me. I would say what has expanded is my understanding of the transformative and therapeutic aspects of the modality of BDSM, and specifically all of the different pieces that are required in order for BDSM to actually be transformational and therapeutic for somebody. Because you can't just say, I don't think you can just say BDSM is therapeutic, BDSM is transformational, because like it's nothing is inherently that way, right? But it has the potential to be. So if you go in with the right sort of awareness and agreements and mindset and understanding of what's possible in those scenarios, that's giving you at least the baseline fundamentals of what you need to have a transformational or transformative or just deeply pleasurable experience. Like, it doesn't always have to be for transformation. Sometimes it could just be because you want to have a fucking hot sexual experience, and that's awesome. Like, that's as much a part of the whole spectrum for me as everything else.
hmm What do you think was the most powerful, what is the most surprising thing that you learned around BDSM?
So the most surprising thing that I learned, I don't think relates to where you're. Well, I'll just say it and we'll just see what happens. We'll see where we're going. It doesn't feel like, yeah, it does peripherally relate to BDSM, right? So we'll just say BDSM, if we're doing a BDSM type dynamic, one of us is in the dominant role, one of us is in the submissive role, right? And both people are actively contributing to the experience, just in different ways. And if you're in the dominant role, you're somebody who's really caring for the experience of the submissive. You're in service to their experience, right? I really like how they talked about this at the workshop. If you're in a dominant role, ideally you're going to get off on giving your sub a meaningful, rich experience, something that does something to their nervous system that helps them feel good or grow or experience pleasure or depth or safety or any number of those things, right? So in order for that to happen, this concept of containment needs to be there. And this is where the most surprising piece, I'm getting there, right? I'm getting there. But containment meaning, like, how do you hold somebody's experience? If I'm the dom, how do I make somebody feel as safe as possible? And not only that, but how do I give their body through touch a physiological experience of being held so that they can deeply relax and so that they can deeply let go of any armoring that they have, so that they can deeply let go of any thoughts or needs of needing to perform in sex or to be
Mm.
sexy or to look a specific way, so they can let go
Mm.
of any thoughts around needing to brace because they're going to be touched in a way that they're not ready for yet.
Yeah.
To really give somebody that good, solid containment. And then here's the
Hmm.
piece that blew me away. Then true deep arousal comes from that place. Like, this is the part where I'm just like, how the fuck did I get to be 40 years old and have never heard somebody say this before? And I've gone to, mind you, I've studied with a lot of people that teach sex and sacred
Mhm.
sexuality. Like, you list them, I've probably studied with them, right? And
Mhm.
this is the first time I've heard somebody describe arousal working in this way. And I've watched it happen, and I've now experimented with it 4 times since the retreat, and I plan to keep exploring with this because it's blowing my fucking mind. And it's like all the strategies that I might have done in the past to generate arousal quickly, like grabbing the nipples, like biting somebody's neck, like stimulating the genitals, licking here, licking there, like trying to sort of amplify arousal through heightened input. Like, sure, that can build some sort of arousal,
Yeah.
but it doesn't necessarily build that sort of like deep, guttural, primal, totally liberated, free arousal that can come from the experience of being so deeply held and safe that someone's natural arousal blossoms and grows like a bonfire. You know, that that has blown my mind. And
Mhm.
does that make sense? Did I like, describe that well enough to
You
kind
did
of understand what
wonderful.
I'm
In
talking about?
fact, let's everyone take a breath with that, huh? Let's
Yeah.
take a breath. Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Mhm.
piece is wild. It's wild. And I experienced that too as a man. Like, when I was in a submissive role, I had the luxury of being paired with multiple people who do professional dom work when I was a sub. And the first time it happened, I just got to sit there and have my wrists tied together. Simple 10-15 minute exercise. But because of the skillfulness of this dom's motions and hands and their consciousness and how they handled my body, I, for the first time ever, went into this space that many people call subspace. And it's this space that I was just describing where I felt so held, I felt so supported and contained and attuned to and connected with, that I just let go. I let go of having to do anything. And from that place, I felt my arousal start to happen. Like, I felt tingles and warmth in my genitals and that part of my body from just sitting there and have somebody tie my wrists sitting in a room full of 50 people. It was wild. It blew my
Yeah.
mind.
Mhm.
And that's like context, like that's not something that generally happens to me. I've been to a number of different play parties and group type experiences, and basically every single time I don't get aroused in those spaces because it's way too overstimulating for me. And I've learned it's actually not, it just doesn't feel like a sexy context for me. But even in the middle of that room, to be held in such a way and contained in such a way that I could just feel free and open for my natural arousal to happen.
Yeah.
Wow. It's incredible.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that,
There's a
yeah.
That's so beautiful. There's also it's because there's, like, the anticipation. It's like once you get so opened and so goopy, it's like what I have found is, like, even it's just, like, the anticipation of, like, arousal touch, can make it blossom. Is
Mm.
that your experience?
I think that that's definitely true. That's not what I was talking about, but I think that's also very true. You know, what I'm talking about is like just being so down regulated. So I'm not necessarily talking about like I'm having a Zen peaceful moment, right? There can be arousal in that space. There can be activation, but I'm so held and so contained that my natural state as a sexual being gets to emerge. It gets to emerge. I'm not like waiting for anyone to touch my genitals or to kiss me or anything like that. But I think that there is this natural, like we're sexual beings, right? And I think that when the system and the body gets safe enough to feel itself truly, and it's in a safe enough context, like arousal can happen,
Hmm.
you
I
know?
love that. You know what I love is because and there's a way I was trying to say the same thing, but I like that you brought it internally rather than coming externally. 'Cause it's almost like 'cause when I was saying it, like, it's almost like I'm so open that it's like the anticipation of, like, wind on my cheek or just you become
Mm.
so hyper present that it's almost like the erotic with the universe starts flowing, but, you're the way that you're saying it makes so much more sense, which is the natural arousal from within.
Yeah, but I think what you're saying is also true. I think it's
Mhm.
also true. Like when I was in, so I had another experience where I got to be a sub for a whole hour plus, and about 20, 30 minutes in at this retreat, I started to feel like I was on MDMA.
Yeah,
And and
totally.
and yes, I know what it feels like to be on MDMA, like actually taking the drug. So I have the comparison, and I felt for those of you who have taken MDMA, you know it's like when you touch your body, if you're watching the video, I'm just touching my shoulder and chest. Like that feels incredible. And you're like, wow, how does touch feel so amazing? It felt like that, kind of like what you're saying. And I remember there was at one point, because we were close to the ocean, the wind came through the room and I had a blindfold on and I was being held by this woman leaning back, my head on her shoulder. And the wind did go across my chest, which was tied up in rope. And I was just like,
Yeah.
oh my God, that is the most pleasurable thing in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
which is very unusual for me in sex to
Mm.
feel that kind of a way, to be
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so grateful that you're like we've spent like 15 minutes really truly describing this feeling because I think it bringing it back to the feet of my beloved cross-dressers or my
Mm,
beloved men who are submissive who live in fantasy, who live in a screen. But this is why I'm so like deeply profoundly devoted to supporting men exploring their feminine. And when I say exploring their feminine, I don't just mean cross dressers. Like it's not like so many men I know or and I work with are empty inside because they're divine, they're masculine, their structure, their awareness, their logic is the main tool that they use day in and day out. But their creation, their felt sensation, their being held, their ability to be deeply present with the magic of the universe is lost to them. And so resentment and anger and all of these different things and it just like friends, we need to institutionalize the feminine within all beings. We need to worship the feminine within all beings. And so the fact that you just like went into this gorgeous, like descriptive dialogue makes me I feel so grateful for all of the penis bearing people listening to this. Just like soak it in, my friends, because this is available to all of us. What happened? You mentioned your life changed when you started semen retention or ejaculatory choice. Tell me like what was that transformation like?
hmm. Talk about a pivot.
And
Um,
that's such funny because it feels like it's the
yeah.
same thing. Because it
No,
feels like you changing your life from an empty masculine
yeah,
into a nourished life.
yeah. No, it's true, it's true. I'm just imagining somebody listening to that and thinking like, "What?
Oh,
Skirt?"
yeah.
But yeah, no, it was. I mean, it was a massive transformation in my life for sure. What do I wanna share? When I started treating my ejaculations as something that should be treated with reverence and respect, and not just something to do mindlessly, I started treating my whole sexual system with reverence and respect, at least more so than I had done, you know? And I started doing practices that would help me just on a practical level, like not get blue balls. Like if you masturbate and you don't ejaculate, one of the one of the biggest fears of people is they'll get blue balls, and so I learned how to do a self-testicular massage, to breathe in certain ways that would help circulate my arousal through my system and not build up in my pelvic area. And I started to do some of those things. Through those practices, I started to deepen my own just somatic awareness of what it meant to be a human in a body, and then what it meant to be a sexual human in a body. And then that deepened somatic awareness started to transform how I would just walk in the world and how I would talk to people. And I started to feel more confident. This was a slow build over a long period of time, but I started to feel more confident. Then in my previous career as a professional photographer and filmmaker in the business world, I started to have more confidence when I would negotiate contracts for people. And because I want to say, like, it wasn't just that I started being more intentional with my ejaculations. It was also that I started being more intentional with all my sexual choices, right? So I stopped watching porn as much. I started cutting it back. And that, in combination with ejaculatory intentionality, in combination with these practices to build what you could call energy, personal power, personal zest, like that started to shift my life. I started to get bigger jobs, and I started to have more energy available to build my business, to build the things I was interested in. Instead of like getting home and what do I do now? I'm going to go to the bedroom and watch porn. It was this sort of compulsive thing that pulled me towards it. Like, instead of doing that, I would meditate or I would go on a walk. And then from that place, I would be way more inspired to do something productive for my life than I would ever feel after watching porn. Like, after watching porn, I feel just kind of like empty and kind of depleted, and it's not even from the shame of it. It's just from like, oh, I've just had an arousal interaction with something fake. Like that's like throws a wrench in the spokes of my nervous system, you know? So like I had more time and availability to put the energy into the things that were important for me. So it was all of those things in concert that helped really improve my life, you know? And you'll read about this if you read the Taoist sexuality books or other yogic sexuality books. None of them say you should just stop ejaculating and your life will improve. It doesn't work like that. But this is what a lot of people on the internet think, who've fallen into the NoFap space or like other sort of like deep men's rabbit hole type things that kind of demonize sex. They say, just like shove it away, you'll be better. But
Hmm.
it's not really how it works, you know?
Mm, what? How what am I missing then?
Like, have you heard of NoFap?
No, I have no
Have you
idea
heard of
what you're
that?
talking about.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, probably
Like,
because of the
what are you talking
territory.
about?
Millions of men on so this is a subculture. This is like, you look up NoFap on YouTube or Reddit or
Okay.
anything, it's just like thousands and thousands and perhaps millions of videos and posts. Basically, NoFap, it means no fapping, which is what they call like the hand going up and down on the penis. It's like an anti-masturbation, anti-sex kind of thing for the sake of personal development, with the intention to achieve the same sort of results that I've been talking about through through the different practices that I did. But the difference is the practices that I did were very inclusive of sex, and they worked to create a new personal relationship with sexuality. Versus what happens with a lot of guys when they do NoFap is they just start doing what they call NoFap, which is they just stop watching porn. They stop thinking about sex. They avoid it. They push it away, shove it under the rug. And then they do start to experience positive results. But then what happens when they eventually meet somebody they want to have sex with or be sexual with? All that shit comes piling back in and slaps them in the face and totally sabotages their attempts at having a healthy sexual relationship, because they never actually learned how to have healthy sexual relationships or to deal with their arousal in an
Mm.
integrative way. They just pushed it away.
It almost becomes fear-based, and it's like, I
Yeah,
can't like, "Don't trigger me with that sexuality shit."
exactly.
Got
Exactly.
it. That's
Yeah.
so interesting, I've never heard of that before.
There you go. There's a new
There we
thing to know
go.
about in the world. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, when I hear you say also, it's like, it's just learning and this is what I why I wanna go back, 'cause, like, this is why I was connecting it to the divine feminine. It's like, learn what does it mean to fill your cup?
Mm,
What does it mean to actually nourish yourself? What does it mean to actually rest when you're resting or play when you're playing?
yeah.
I feel like and I get lost in this too sometimes of like when I rest, I just want to escape. And it's like I just go on social media and I start scrolling. And then at the end of it, I'm so much worse off.
Yeah.
And yet I have this illusion that I rested. And
Yeah.
it just feels like like as we just constantly are draining ourselves and leaking our energy.
Totally. I mean, it's like eating
And
fries, like fast food fries. Like that's what it is. That's what social media is. Like you bunch a shit ton of salt on there, a bunch of sugary ketchup. It feels good in the moment, and then afterwards you're just like, oh,
it
what
feels
did I do?
terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah. And so specifically to the people in long term relationships, I want to take a moment for you because I I understand how challenging it can be to confront the patterns that you are hanging on to in order to make the relationship work. Like I like what it means to like, well, we get a little pleasure here and we get a little pleasure here, right? So like and the rest of it is a lot of work. So why would I want to look underneath the rug of those places where we get a little pleasure because there might be scary monsters underneath there. But mm, your relationship could be a place where you get deeply nourished. And so taking the time to slow things down and rediscover each other. I just I'm such a giant advocate, especially if there is a gender flop in there, like a cross-dressing situation. It means that you have to rediscover each other. And I'm just wondering like can that be a can that be a delicious exploration that you get to go on while also allowing it to be challenging and scary?
You can't just I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but you can't just expect that it's all going to work out and be happy, right? Like you could encounter some gnarly shit. Like that's just part of it. I at some point in the last couple of years, I remember I've coached a lot of people, and I was coaching this one guy who has been married to a woman, has multiple children, all this stuff, and had an experience feeling attraction for another man at some point. And it was a very destabilizing experience for him, and exploring that with intentionality is smart. Like it would not have been smart for him to just go off and like start trying to have experiences because of his life context and because of his relationship context. So like you have to move really intelligently in these realms sometimes. And when we were going forward, like we were real, and we said like, well, what happens if you explore this? Like it might be the case that you realize maybe you don't want to be with your wife romantically, sexually. Like that's a risk. But is it also a risk to not explore who you
Yes.
actually are?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, and then it's a choice. It's a choice.
I love
And
the way
very easy for me to say that from this
yeah.
perspective, but yeah.
But I love the way that you say that there may be there's always a risk. But it is still there may be a cost to the relationship. It means that like the relationship will have to change or alter or that it will be crunchy, but there like without that an equal or greater cost to your own sense of being and your own sense of grounding in your own life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a
And that
lot of
doesn't
people forget about that, especially in the masculine or in the provider role.
Yeah,
which is like my job is just to continue to work until I die.
totally. I mean, and there are an infinite number of ways to approach those situations too. And if you're somebody listening to this and you feel like you're in one of those precipice type situations where you've got some big shit on the horizon, get support,
Get
like talk,
support.
go to therapist, coach, whatever, group,
My
anything,
God,
like
please.
talk to people, somehow figure out a way to get support because otherwise you're going to drive yourself fucking crazy, you know? And
And
it
make
could,
mistakes that
yeah,
are unnecessary.
yeah, totally.
Just like so unnecessary. You don't have to recreate the wheel by yourself.
Yeah, there are people out there who can help for
Yeah.
sure.
That's a beautiful way. And so we're going to start closing up this episode. And that's actually a great segue. Taylor, are you somebody that could possibly help? And if so, would you like to share where people can find you?
I would say, what do I want to say to this? Hmm. I would say there are probably other folks that would be better supportive at helping somebody make like a big life transition like that, especially working within the context and the subject area that you're working in. My my bigger my bigger realm is working with cis men, well, yeah, cis men of any sexual orientation, but who are interested in being more in the dominant role in their relationship, who are interested in also overcoming challenges around premature ejaculation and erectile dysfunction and sexual anxiety and porn addiction and those kinds of things. It doesn't necessarily have to be men who are wanting to be in the dominant role. Like there have been many men who've come through my courses who are more naturally sexually submissive. But in terms of my current area of directional interest in supporting people, like that's the area that I'm studying more of right now and putting more of my effort and energy into. And that being said, if you are somebody who has a penis who wants to overcome challenges you're experiencing with erectile dysfunction and premature ejaculation, it's possible that my programs could be helpful for you too. I would say there have been all kinds of people who have gone through, there have been trans people who have gone through my programs and they've had really, good success as penis owners as well. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And where can they find your programs?
I'm on the internet. taylorjohnson.life is my website. Yeah.
Perfect. Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening and just sending out so much love to you in whatever situation you are and so much empathy. Please reach out. You can find me at soulkink.com. I would love to hear from you. And don't forget to leave a comment. Bye bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.